My father abandoned me for his new family. Now he needs my help. His perfect son wants my kidney to survive. Growing up, my father was my hero. He was kind, hardworking, and always seemed to know the right thing to say to make me feel special. But all of that changed when I was 10 years old. My parents' marriage fell apart. Dad left us to start a new life with a woman he'd been seeing behind my mom's back. She had no children of her own at the time, but within a year, she gave birth to a son, Alex. Dad made it clear that Alex was his fresh start, his chance at building the perfect family. At first, I clung to hope that he'd still want me in his life. I wrote him letters, sent him pictures I drew in school, and even asked my mom to call him so I could hear his voice. But his replies were always distant, as though I was just some acquaintance he had to entertain out of obligation. Slowly, I realized I wasn't part of his new life. Over the years, I watched from afar as Dad lavished all his love and attention on Alex. Birthday parties, vacations, and family outings that I never got to experience were now his everyday life with his nude son. I'll never forget the day I saw a family photo of them on social media. Dad, his wife, and Alex were smiling on a sunny beach, wearing matching outfits. The caption read, "Family is everything." That was the moment I stopped believing I mattered to him. Mom tried her best to make up for Dad's absence. She worked tirelessly to keep food on the table and still managed to attend every recital, every game, and every parent-teacher conference. She never badmouthed him, but I could see the hurt in her eyes every time he let me down. By the time I was a teenager, I stopped reaching out altogether. The final straw came when he didn't show up for my high school graduation. I'd sent him an invitation, hoping he'd at least acknowledge my achievement. Instead, I saw online that he was at Alex's soccer game. That day, I promised myself I wouldn't let his neglect define my future. Life wasn't easy, but I worked hard. I put myself through college with part-time jobs and scholarships, graduating at the top of my class. I landed a great job in tech, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was building a life that was entirely my own. I heard bits and pieces about Dad and Alex through distant relatives. Alex was the golden boy, handsome, athletic, and the apple of Dad's eye. Meanwhile, I was barely mentioned, a footnote in my father's life. It didn't bother me anymore. I had learned to accept that I wasn't part of their picture-perfect family. But then, out of nowhere, Dad reached out. One evening, as I was unwinding after a long day at work, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before picking up. "Hello, Robin," a voice said, hesitant but familiar. I froze. "Dad?" "Yes," he replied, his voice shaking slightly. "It's me. I need to talk to you. It's important." I couldn't imagine what he'd want after all these years of silence, but curiosity kept me on the line. "What's going on?" I asked, my tone colder than I intended. "It's Alex," he said. "He's very sick. He needs a kidney transplant, and you're his best match." The weight of his words hit me like a truck. The father who had abandoned me, the man who poured all his love into Alex while I was left to fend for myself, was now asking for my help to save his favorite son. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, barely containing my anger. "You ignored me for years, and now you want me to give my kidney to Alex?" "Please, Robin," he said, his voice cracking. "We don't have much time. You're the only one who can save him." I didn't answer. I just hung up, my mind racing with a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, and an unsettling sense of vindication. He needed me. After all these years. He finally needed me. The days following my father's call were a whirlwind of emotions. Part of me wanted to slam the door on him and his perfect family, leaving them to deal with the mess on their own. Another part of me felt conflicted. Despite everything, Alex was innocent in all of this. But every time I thought about agreeing to help, a wave of resentment would crash over me. My mind replayed years of neglect. The missed birthdays, the forgotten holidays, the indifference. I thought about my mom, who had sacrificed so much to ensure I had a chance at success while Dad played house with his new family. I decided to meet him, not out of kindness, but because I wanted answers. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. When I walked in, I immediately recognized him, though he looked older, more worn down than I remembered. He stood up awkwardly when he saw me, as if unsure whether to hug me or shake my hand. I did neither, sliding into the seat across from him without a word. "Robin," he started, his voice tentative. "Thank you for coming. I'm not here to agree to anything," I said coldly. "I just want to know why you think I owe you anything after all these years." He flinched at my tone but nodded. "You're right. I haven't been there for you. Stop," I interrupted. "Don't give me some half-hearted apology now. I want to know why you think it's okay to call me out of the blue after years of nothing and ask me for something so huge." He looked down, his hands clasped tightly. "I don't have an excuse," he admitted. "I made mistakes. I was a coward. But Alex, he's my son. And I wasn't?" I snapped, the bitterness I'd kept buried for years finally bubbling to the surface. He said, his voice breaking. "You are. But You chose him," I said flatly. "You chose your new family, your new life. And now you want me to save it?" Tears welled in his eyes, but I felt no sympathy. "Robin, please. Alex doesn't deserve to suffer because of my mistakes." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "You're right. He doesn't. But neither did I." That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. My father's words echoed in my head, but so did the memories of every time he let me down. I thought about Alex, a kid I'd never even met but who shared my blood. It wasn't his fault. He hadn't chosen to be the center of Dad's new life any more than I'd chosen to be cast aside. But then I thought about my mom. I thought about the nights she stayed up sewing my clothes so I wouldn't feel embarrassed at school, the double shifts she worked to pay for my textbooks, the unwavering support she gave me even when she was exhausted and heartbroken. She never abandoned me. She never asked for anything in return. The next day, I visited my mom. As always, she welcomed me with open arms and a warm smile. After catching up a bit, I told her everything. She listened quietly, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she took my hand. "Robin," she said gently, "I raised you to be kind, but I also raised you to value yourself. Don't let anyone guilt you into forgetting what you're worth." I nodded, her words giving me the clarity I needed. I decided not to call my father. Instead, I wrote him a message. "I've thought long and hard about your request. While I sympathize with Alex's situation, I can't forget the years you chose to erase me from your life. You made your choices, and those choices had consequences. I hope you find a solution, but it won't be through me." I sent it the next day, knowing it would hurt him. But for the first time in years, I felt free. It had been weeks since I sent the message to my father. I didn't expect a response, and for a while, none came. Life went on, but the weight of the situation lingered in the back of my mind. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I was shocked to see my father standing there, his face drawn and tired. "Robin," he said, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I hesitated but stepped aside, letting him in. He stood awkwardly in my living room, glancing at the photos on the walls. Pictures of me and my mom, milestones he hadn't been part of. "I got your message," he began, sitting down on the edge of the couch. "And I wanted to say I understand. You're right, I don't deserve your help." "Then why are you here?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Because I needed to see you," he said. "To tell you how sorry I am. I've spent years justifying my actions, convincing myself that I was doing what was best for everyone. But I was wrong. I failed you, and there's nothing I can do to fix that." His words caught me off guard. For years, I had dreamed of him admitting his mistakes, but now that it was happening, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. "What do you want from me?" I asked quietly. "Nothing," he said. I wanted to tell you the truth. Alex is in the hospital, and he's not doing well. But I don't expect anything from you. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry." I stared at him, trying to process his words. He looked defeated, like a man who had finally realized the full weight of his mistakes. "Do you even know me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Do you know what I've been through? What Mom's been through? Do you have any idea how much it hurt to see you give Alex everything I wanted from you?" "I don't," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. And that's my greatest failure. For a long moment, we sat in silence. Then he stood up, looking at me one last time. "I'll go now," he said. "I just wanted to tell you I love you, even if I never showed it. You deserved better." He walked to the door, and for a moment, I considered letting him leave. But something stopped me. "Wait," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned, hope flickering in his eyes. "I'm not saying I'll do it," I began, "but I'll visit Alex. Not for you, but for him. He's innocent in all of this, and if there's a chance I can help him, I need to see for myself." My father nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. "Thank you," he said softly. The hospital room was quiet except for the beeping of monitors. Alex looked pale and fragile, a far cry from the golden boy I'd heard so much about. He opened his eyes when I entered, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. "You're Robin," he said, his voice weak. "And you're Alex," I replied, sitting down beside him. "I know you hate me," he said. "I would too. But I'm sorry for what Dad did to you. You didn't deserve that." His words took me by surprise. I had expected resentment or entitlement, but instead, there was only sincerity. "I don't hate you," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." We talked for a while, and by the end of the visit, I felt a strange sense of peace. Alex wasn't the enemy. He was just another victim of my father's poor choices. In the end, I decided not to donate my kidney. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one for me. I helped Dad and Alex find other resources, connecting them with specialists and organizations that could assist. My father tried to rebuild a relationship with me after that, but I kept him at a distance. Some wounds are too deep to heal completely. As for Alex, I eventually found a donor and he began to recover. We stayed in touch, and over time, I came to see him as more than just my father's perfect son. He became my brother. And through it all, I learned something important. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and helping others doesn't mean sacrificing yourself.